Action done.
I'm sorry.
Hey, welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to come to the Ecology Mountain Living Lecture Series. And tonight we are going to talk about agrivoltaics.
Fact. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you
We
got
have
it.
Sydney to guide us in any more multi-syllable words. So
There'll be many.
thank you for being here. And I'm going to introduce Sydney. Thank you for coming.
Sweet. Well, thank you all for having me. I work in the field of agrivoltaics, as Dan so eloquently says. And I work with Carolita, who I think a lot of you know through either past lecture series or been living around here. She originally was going to do this talk as the soil scientist side of things, but I am the policy analyst side of things. So I looked up a little bit more ecology facts for you guys, but we'll have some fun policy ones as well. So I work for the Colorado Agrivoltaic Learning Center, which is essentially just a nonprofit. And we work in Colorado to try to educate about agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is essentially the combination of agriculture and solar, as you can see here. So cows underneath the panels, some people farming within the array, just trying to make use of the land underneath panels instead of when solar comes in and taking farmland out of production. So we have the Agrivoltaic Learning Center, and then our site that we're based out of is Jack's Solar Garden. So that's based in Longmont, Colorado. It's 5 acres of solar, and we've had different types of agricultural underneath. So to just set some context on why this is an important issue.
You need to move.
There. So we've seen definitely a lot of solar coming in. I'm not sure if you guys have seen a lot of solar coming in around here, but we've definitely seen that more on the eastern plains and even in southern Colorado. We have a ton of solar coming in, and that is certainly a good thing. It's providing a lot of economic value, as you can see on this graph here. We've had like over 8,000 jobs from solar. We've had definitely like a lot of value of 10.5 billion in market value for solar. And it's useful for reaching our renewable energy goals too. Colorado has really big renewable energy goals of reaching 100% renewable energy for the state by 2050. So to meet those, we're going to need a lot of solar coming in. So far, we've already had 5.5 gigawatts of installed solar. And to meet our goals kind of nationwide, we've seen that we probably will need to use about 100,000 acres plus of having solar come in, and a lot of that will be on farmland as well. So we've got our goals here. And some of the communities are feeling the burden from this solar development, as sometimes it will end up going on farmland. It's just attractive land, as they're often by transmission lines. It's flat land as well. So we need this solar coming in, but then it's coming with farmland burdens as well. So according to American Farmland Trust, we're seeing 250,000 to 500,000 acres of farmland being converted to other uses over the next 15 years, which is quite a bit of land considering the amount of farms that we have currently in production, and the amount of that's small farmland is pretty small as well. And that's not all solar necessarily. We're seeing that from other sorts of development, just like urban sprawl and commercial buildings coming in. But a lot of that definitely will be farmland as well. This includes native rangeland and highly productive irrigated cropland as well. And then with that, we're just kind of seeing a lot of farmers facing difficult things. Their margins are very thin. There's rising prices for them in equipment, but not necessarily in sales. And they're just having a lot of difficulties on that, alongside issues with like climate change. You guys know there's water issues here. So all those are compounding for them to be a little vulnerable to perhaps solar development coming in. And we want to make sure that solar is coming in and we're having renewable energy, but we want to do this in the right way where we're still protecting farmland. So this is where we get agrivoltaics. And agrivoltaics is essentially agriculture plus photovoltaics or solar. And this can be done in a lot of different ways and different configurations for depending on how you do it. We want to make sure that agrivoltaics isn't just coming in and putting down the land and doing some sort of new agriculture. You want to keep continuing what's been already done. So whether maybe that's crop production there, You can do animal husbandry, you can have like grazing underneath it, you can even do ecosystem services. So it's definitely, you can have different configurations and different types for what works for your area. And with this as well, there's definitely different trade-offs based on whether you want to be more agricultural focused or energy and cost focused. So on some, say you're having livestock grazing, and we were talking about cattle earlier. Maybe you want to raise the panel hay for that a little bit instead of having it lowered to the ground, but that might mean it's less efficient on the energy side or more costlier. So same thing with row spacing and panel spacing. It definitely is just up to you on what the configuration you want and try to find that right balance of whether you want to be more ag or ecosystem focused versus energy focused. And alongside that, there's a lot of agrivoltaic benefits outside of just having solar on the land and keeping the farmland in production as well. So we've seen a lot of benefits on the water conservation side. We have researchers at University of Arizona that have an agrivoltaic site, and they have seen that in their tomatoes and their peppers that are growing under agrivoltaic sites and have that shade, they are able to get the same amount of yields with 50% less water use. So a really decent water saver there, especially in places like Colorado, where we are not so much sun limited, but water limited instead. And then we're also seeing higher crop yields as well. We've seen that within our array of our leafy greens definitely grow better within the shade. They are enjoying that too. And then you can also see increased solar panel efficiency when that water is trapped underneath the ground, when there's shade and there's more moisture in the ground due to that. When it does evaporate, it actually goes to the back of the panels and then they are more efficient than they normally would be otherwise. So you can also see improved habitat for livestock. They of course enjoy the shade too. I was just talking to somebody on my way up here. I was driving by some trees and the cattle were just all underneath it. So they certainly enjoy the shade and it really has a lot of health benefits for them as well. Same thing with the livestock with the farmers, it increases farmer well-being. They're able to access shade much easier, have their water bottle near the shade, keep that cool as well. And then also there's just a lot of economic opportunities that come with this. So as I mentioned, a lot of farms are operating on very small margins. So having solar on site is sometimes a really good financial asset for people to have. You can get between $500 and $2,000 an acre for leasing land to solar, just dependent on where you are and what kind of market is in the area. But that's certainly something that's really valuable to farms that are operating on a small margin. So if you have a year of drought or not as good of growth or something happens within the family, at least you have like a fallback for this as well. And so at Calc, we kind of try to showcase agrivoltaics. So we do a lot of different events at our site on Jack Solar Garden. This is it, you can see it here. We did raise our panels a little bit. We have them 6 feet on one side and 8 feet on the other. So that just allows for us to get kind of machinery in here. We've had livestock in there more, and that was mainly just for research purposes. You definitely don't always have to raise the height of the panels with the spacing, but we were looking to try to do some more research, so that was useful for us. And beyond that, we have a ton of events on site to try to showcase it. We have field trips come out. We have like community events. We just had an event, Pollinator Palooza, where we had a bunch of environmental organizations come out and table and showcase what they do. And yeah, we have different like stakeholders on site as well. So it's really just useful for showcasing the idea. And once people see it in person, they really latch on to how good of an idea. And so alongside the site, we have the nonprofit, which is Calc. And we try to focus on these 3 pillars of policy, education, and community. So the policy side of things is more to try to implement these ideas within local and state government. So we've provided land use code guidance for local governments. We do these things called road shows where we go across the state and meet with different parts of local government, city planners, county planners, utilities, various other government officials. And then just do background research as well for what might be some good policy ideas. And then we have our education piece too. We really focus on education for 4th through 12th graders. So we have a lot of different lesson plans on there on what is agrivoltaics, how can you relate that to your science standards, what does that mean for policy and government. And that's been really useful, and the kids get really excited, especially when they get to come out to the farm. And we had an obstacle course one time where they were going over and under different things within the solar arrays, and they really liked that. And then community as well. We have our events, as I mentioned. We have resources for people that are interested in it. And we have our salsa program as well, which is what Carolita does. And this is solar array land supporting agribusiness. So we try to support agribusinesses with solar arrays that are already in place to get them access to land. So on site, we've done a lot of different things to try to showcase agrivoltaics. Here is our vegetable production that we used to do. We had 2 acres of the array under market vegetable production. And we were actually the first agrivoltaic CSA in the country. So that was pretty cool. We don't do the veggies anymore. We did that for a few years and got a really good amount of research out of it. And now we've switched over to kind of berry production. So we have different varieties of raspberries and blackberries on site. And we're hoping to see some more interesting research come from that. And then we also conduct research. So we have a decent amount of the land under the arrays where research is conducted either by Colorado State University or University of Arizona. And we've done research on grassland ecology, we've done soil science, we've done carbon sequestration, and there's definitely a lot of good papers that have come out of it. On the left over here is our grassland ecologist, Matt Sturgio. And he came out with a paper a while ago that found in drought years, the forage grown underneath the panels is about 20% greater than that grown outside of it. So as we're looking into the future and thinking about what kind of temperatures we might get, what kind of sun we might get, it's likely that that's going to be more of the likelihood and more important that we have shade like that now. And then we've done livestock grazing as well. So here are some of the sheep that we've had on site. As you can see, they're mainly collecting under the shade here. They really prefer that, and this is probably the biggest industry within agrivoltaics. So it's definitely at scale. Currently, about 100,000 acres of solar is under sheep grazing management. This is just making a lot more sense for the solar development companies. It's pretty expensive for them to maintain the vegetation underneath. They have to go in with chemicals, they have to go in with mowers, it's pretty expensive. And with sheep grazing, it's not as expensive for them, and a win for the grazer as well. So this is definitely the most popular industry in agrivoltaics right now. But we're always trying to showcase what's possible too. We know that cattle is a huge industry in Colorado, not necessarily sheep. So we're trying to put out there that this is possible. You can have the cattle underneath the array, and look at them, they're pretty happy under there. I think when we present this to people, we're typically met with, oh, you can't put the cows underneath there, they're gonna get riled up, they're gonna get angry. Not from what we've seen. Typically they just come in and they enjoy the shade. They enjoy having access to forage. So they eat and they lay down and they take a nap. We found as long as you can manage them properly with the grazing and the shade, they're pretty just happy to be there and not gonna damage the panel. And this one's a video, if we can try to make that work. Yeah. Okay, here's a little cow that we had out on site rubbing up against the piles of the solar panel. Yeah, it's getting a good scratch in there. And as you can see, it is not doing anything to that pile there. So for every foot of steel that's above ground, there's also a foot of steel below ground. And the panels have to be rated to like category 3 hurricane winds. Like ours in Boulder is rated to 145 miles per hour winds. So cow is not going to move it by scratching up against it. And alongside agrivoltaics, we also have ecovoltaics. So ecovoltaics is more on the ecosystem services side. So alongside the production of renewable energy is just ecosystem services. Whether that be pollinator habitats, that could be the rehabilitation of land that was previously harmed. This is outside of the ag side of it and more on the ecosystem side. So we've seen a lot of benefits of ecovoltaics so far. It is relatively newer compared to agrivoltaics, but there's a lot more researchers looking into it. So that researcher earlier on our site, he also studies ecovoltaics, and this is a site they have in Nunn, Colorado, so like an hour or two east of here, where they've been studying native short grass, and they've been trying to see what the effects are for that. And they've just seen that the shade has been really helping it grow in better. It's been more greener, it has higher protein content. Yeah, they've been seeing some positive things from that. So I wanted to add some just little facts on the side from what we've seen there. Yeah, 20 to 40% increase in plant productivity. So that 20% increase we were talking about, that can get higher too. And then also we've seen that total insect abundance can triple if you have like a pollinator habitat in there with a lot of native plants. That's pretty useful for these things of native bees having up to a 20-fold increase in numbers. Grassland bird species richness can nearly double. So it's definitely just kind of crucial that you're integrating those pieces with the solar as well so that these different species can benefit from that. And I wanted to include a bit more on the ecology side, since that's what your guys' series is about. So Colorado's semi-arid climate, we're certainly water limited. I don't know that. We've seen that this year as well. So at Jack's, we've been studying more of the cool season grasses and trying to see, like, since water and the temperature and sunlight are so important and so variable to us, what does that mean for grassland ecology here? So basically on site, we were looking for different patterns on like how the panels redistribute the sun and the water and what that kind of means for whatever ecology is going on underneath them. And this one's another little video too, if you can get it.
Nice, just click it again.
Oh, it does work. Okay, so here you can see the panels kind of setting up in the morning. They'll track the sun, so they start facing east. And you can see on the edge over here, this side gets a lot of sun then. So this one is like the morning sun, afternoon shade. So those are the ones that need more shade is what you would plant there. Then as we move throughout the day, in the afternoon, the kind of bed under the west side is getting more sun. So those are probably more heat tolerant plants that you're going to be wanting to put there. This side too, though, whenever we do have our afternoon rains, it comes down and it redistributes off this panel to this side. So this side ends up getting a lot more moisture in it than the other side would. And this is some of the research that they found from here. I can't go too much in depth on the science because that would have been more Carolita's, but I can show you the points here. So essentially how they have this figured set up. These are meant to kind of show the panels. This would be the west edge of it, whereas this would be the eastern edge of it. So on that west edge, where they have the panels facing west in the afternoon, and they're getting a lot of rain running down off the panels, they're seeing the highest amounts of soil moisture there, because it's just able to collect there in the afternoon whenever you get that afternoon rain. Then in the middle here, this is the part that's least shaded, so there's just seeing a lot of sun there. So if you are trying to plant crops that do need a lot of sun, they're good to do in that middle row where it's not necessarily shading it as much. And then here, actually, this was a surprising find that on the eastern edge, they were seeing the highest productivity of plants under there, which was surprising because you think it would match up with the soil moisture. There's the question marks there because these are from 2021. But now we've kind of found that a lot of the plants are really preferring to have the morning sun and then the shade in the afternoon. And that's what's leading to that productivity. And so to kind of do agrivoltaics properly, we need to follow some principles for putting in solar correctly and setting it up so you can do this agriculture on site or leading to ecosystem services. So we have our 3 principles of dual use solar, which is just agrivoltaics or ecovoltaics. And our first one is to more increase accessibility and reduce barriers for agriculture by elevating or spacing the panels. So on ours, we have one side that's risen up to 6 feet, which is about like 2 feet higher than typical solar would be. And then we have the other sides to 8 feet. So say if we wanted to have cattle in there, maybe it's better to have them on the 8-foot side, try the 6 foot as well. This provided space as well to get tractors through, so you can change the row spacing. And this is more just about knowing what you're going to do ahead of time and setting it up for success in that way. And then our second one is wire management. So the pictures on the top are pretty typical of what solar companies would usually do. You can kind of see some wires here that are like looping underneath and going across there. And if you are going to have people or animals in your array, that's not going to be super useful. You're not going to be able to have access to it, and it can be a dangerous thing too. The cows and the sheep are pretty mellow, but they get curious and they like to look around and maybe chew on some things, and it's not best to have your wires hanging like that. So we say to have the wires either buried underground or have them high and tight and flush against the panels. On our site, we have mesh wiring against them, so that they just stay in there and animals can't get to it. They can't be a piece of equipment getting caught on it at all. And that's been really, really useful for just keeping things safe on site. And then our last principle that we have is just around soil health. A lot of the times as well, when solar developers come in, it's pretty common practice to grade the land, and that's not good for the soil, it's the soil health, the biodiversity, or the topsoil either. So we just recommend to avoid grading the land if possible, minimize it to the largest extent possible. They do have different tracking systems now where even on like hilly landscapes, you can still put solar in without having to grade it. That's not something they have to do as long as you know to advocate for it. And then also just being aware of soil compaction too. When these big machineries drive back and forth over the land, it really compacts the soil, and then that's not good conditions for things to grow in either. So just being aware of the soil health during the development and construction phase of it is really useful as well. And then I'll go a bit more on our policy side, since that's where I am. So these are kind of the things that we're working on currently in the policy sector. We've got all these principles, we've got the science, and this is just trying to get it implemented more with the community and get local policymakers to understand what it is and community members to advocate for it. So on that side, we do a lot of local engagement with policymakers. Here's a roundtable at one of our sessions. We typically go to different communities and invite extension professionals, utilities, different ag organizations, local government, and have them all come in the same room and say, hey, what have the issues been with solar? Is there any contrasting with farmland? Let's talk about it and let's see what solutions we can come up with. So that's on that kind of engagement side more. And then we do research as well. Here is a report where we partnered with NREL here and county land use code regulations for solar development. So these are more just on the research side, providing some background knowledge so that we have things to talk about when we go engage with these local communities. And then this is just more like specific to the local side. One of our recent ones has been to work more with local communities that are seeing a lot of solar and trying to get their land use code up to date so that they can advocate more for agrivoltaics instead of just typical solar that we come in. So in Colorado at the state level, here's a little bit of background on our policy landscape there. We've had two different bills kind of related to agrivoltaics, only one of them specifically about it. This was in 2023, and it had an agrivoltaics definition, which also included ecovoltaics, the ecology side of things. It also made a research and demonstration grant and gave a personal property tax exemption for machinery on agrivoltaic sites. So that all ties into that definition there. And the research and demonstration grants have about 1 more year, and then the tax exemption goes till 2029. So we're hoping to see that updated soon. And then the lower one isn't exactly on agrivoltaics, but was more related to that renewable energy siting at the county level. So Colorado Energy Office developed a repository of different codes on how you could deal with renewable energy siting. And a lot of this often has to do with agriculture too, as there is a lot of conflict on the local level on that topic. So there was a lot in the report advocating for further research on agrivoltaics, and we're hopeful that we can get our land use code integrated with that as well. So different things that we're specifically working on. We work with utilities a lot on agrivoltaics. Right now, it's mainly just a lot of education, as this is a new topic. But we're also looking into some specific areas. We look into their RFPs, or requests for proposal, for different solar developments that are coming online, and try to ask them to advocate for land stewardship in that too. So typically these are scored based on cost or sustainability or where it will be sited. And we're trying to say that, hey, you should be including land stewardship in that as well, of making sure that whoever is developing this is taking care of the land underneath too. And then we're also creating programs for utilities to try and incentivize agrivoltaic development. This is more just kind of, we have an outline of our program here that you can't quite read, but is on just how you can make like a fund for agrivoltaics within utilities that can support specific projects. And then one thing we've seen is kind of popular within utilities starting is introducing that grazing as vegetation management. So as I mentioned earlier, within the arrays, it's pretty expensive to do the vegetation management. Mowing is expensive. They use a lot of chemicals on it. So it's actually pretty attractive to switch over to sheep grazing instead. And then we are also currently working with state agencies on agrivoltaics. So agencies like Colorado Energy Office, like Colorado Department of Ag, a few different ones like that. And just trying to see like, hey, are you aware of agrivoltaics? Do you know about it? Are you integrating it at all? Are you working with each other on it? So we're trying currently to get a scope of the landscape on that and just see more ways that they can maybe implement it and work with each other to try and get this at the state level. And then our last one is this land use code that I talked on. Definitely a lot of local governments are seeing a lot of solar coming into the eastern plains and in the south as well. And they don't necessarily have the regulations set up for that. And if they do, the majority of them don't have agrivoltaics integrated. The majority of them just don't know this is even something that they can advocate for. But when they do and it's included in the code, it means it's a lot more likely that they can ask developers to do this, especially if they are citing it specifically on agricultural land. So we made this land use code guidance for deploying agrivoltaics, and it has a bunch of different code in there on what you kind of need for wire management, what you should think about with water irrigation on site, what is appropriate to site in certain spots. So this is kind of our big one on trying to support local government and provide them with code when they don't necessarily have the capacity to go do the research themselves on this very niche topic. And then this is kind of just an overview of our resources as well. We have a lot of different resources on our site besides the land use code guidance. We also have ones on essential steps for landowners to consider. So if you're someone that owns land and are thinking of doing solar, you can integrate agrivoltaics by either finding our resource or coming to us to talk. Our solar design considerations regarding heights and row spacing. And we just have a lot on our site to try to educate people about this. We have these different resources. We also have educational ones for kids. And we also have a movie that just came out too called Save the Farm, Save the Future. It's on YouTube. It's free. It is like an hour long, but it's really good. It follows several different farmers throughout Colorado and kind of their journey in agrivoltaics and how it was useful for them and how they integrated it. So that's a lot on our site. I think I might have been quick, but that's all I have, and I'm happy to take questions. Yeah.
So I have a bunch of sheep, and I
Awesome.
think this sounds just great. So he said sheep is great. It's not a bad idea. Sorry, but it was expected.
I like that. It's good.
So how do I get my sheep to where I mow their lawn or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We've mainly seen so far it would have to be you reaching out to solar developers, but that's starting to switch where solar developers are interested in trying to cure more grazing. I would say at this point, it really is based on where you're located versus where they are, because I'm sure you're not going to want to be transporting them super far. So a lot of it is on convenience if there's a grazer nearby. But then also just reaching out through them. There's an organization called American Solar Grazing, and they typically try to match sheep with solar sites in existence that are looking for grazers. So yeah, there's a few resources out there if you're interested in it. And it pays about like typically over $300 an acre annually, so. Yeah,
Have you done any work with Poudre Valley REA?
no, we're trying to connect with them more. We haven't connected with them a bunch. Some of the co-ops can be sometimes difficult because their priority is safety and cost. So it's not necessarily like they're always looking to integrate these things. But I think something like the sheep grazing would be really interesting to them at this point.
So if Dan had a whole ranch and with his herd of sheep, flock.
Oh, you want a sheep herder?
Would he? And he wants to have the solar on his property. How does he go about doing that?
Yeah, that one's probably the biggest barrier that we've run into with co-ops like PBREA. I know that they have a specific policy where you are limited on how much solar you can do on your own site. It's either 25 kilowatts, which is really, really small. We have 1 megawatt on our farm, and that's 5 acres. So 25 kilowatts is just like a few panels, not so much. Or 120% of your current energy production, which is probably something similar. So we've been running into a barrier there that they're not necessarily allowing residential sites to have more solar to do agrivoltaics. And there's a bunch of things to consider as well amongst like, are you by a transmission line? Does it run right by your house? Can you connect to the grid easily? Are they interested in doing maybe a community solar? There's a lot of factors to consider with it. But it's doable, and we're trying to look into more ways for them to be a little more flexible on that.
So Sydney, I can see where dairy farmers would like solar panels like for their loafing sheds and
Yeah.
who pays for that? Does the farmer pay for that or?
For the solar development?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it depends which route you're going. Like if you're trying to just have solar on site to power your own operations, then yeah, that would be on you to try to pay for that. There were some federal tax exemptions. Those are not in place anymore, sadly. So it does sometimes come with a hefty price to have it on there, but if you size it properly, it does pay off over the years. But if PBREA, for example, was looking to do some sort of community solar where they would connect to the grid and then that would go out to other people, then that would be them using the land and they would lease it from you instead of you owning it and paying for it.
Community grids, don't they? Poudre Valley REA? Or there's big grids where you could sign up and say you want part of your bill to pay come from this, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure they do have some community solar. I haven't looked into PBREAs specifically, but I'm sure they have a few where you can opt into it. Then it's more them choosing where they site it, and it's not necessarily the consumer's end saying like, I would like one on my property. It's just,
Well, it seems like they should talk to each other.
I agree.
Yeah.
We would like if they talked to us more, yeah.
so is that what you do? You, besides doing the research, showing the benefits of this,
Yeah.
then you try to merge those groups, is that?
Yep, that's basically our main goal right now as a educational nonprofit. Is the idea is still so new that a lot of people just aren't even aware of it. And if they were in the same room talking to each other, it could be a lot more feasible for these things to come online and the ideas to pop up from it.
I guess my question would be, is the benefit of the solar actually for like a power company?
Mm.
All right, so the rancher or the farmer gets the benefit of having the panels on his land, but it's really all taken care of presumably by some power company who just wants to increase their solar capacity.
Yeah, that's a really good question because it just depends on the way you do it. So like at our farm specifically, our executive director, Byron Comnick, he actually owns the solar. So he was his own developer of it and he procured it and got it on site. And he was able to do that because he was sat really well by a transmission line. He was on Excel's territory and they do allow you to do your own community solar. And then he gets the benefits of getting payments from solar as well. So the generation that goes out to other people, the money that comes in from that goes back to him. But he was in a pretty special situation where he had those factors line up pretty well. Other than that, yeah, it probably would be something like a utility being sited on your land. And you would get money from them leasing your land, but not necessarily the specific solar payments that come up. I don't know if that makes
Well,
sense.
But it sounds to me like the benefits of actually having the solar on your land to the land itself and the animals
Yeah,
would make it reasonable to do.
yeah, you've got it. Yeah, we think so too. We think it's useful in a lot of different ways of like the shade, especially here, just provides so many different benefits. And then even that leasing, like, is pretty useful of at the low end is $500 an acre annually. The high end, it can be up to 3,000. So you can be getting paid pretty well to have solar and then still have your ag and production too.
Nice. So the testing or what you showed us where they're moving the panels, the
Mhm.
morning, you might hear something. Was that roughly at the Fort Collins elevation, like 4,500 square feet?
Yeah, about, yep, that's our site in Longmont, so like about the same, maybe a little bit higher.
So different elevations would be different, but
Yeah, it would definitely change. That's a good question. It would definitely change what you're growing underneath. I guess that's different region by region too, of like what does better at different elevations and what is more impactful with having the shade and the water loading. But I think that's something they haven't looked into a ton yet.
of course, different areas have different humidities.
Yeah, like on the western slope right now, there's a site, there's a vineyard under panels. And yeah, and there's a peach orchard under panels as well. And they're finding it's really useful because it actually, the panels at night will trap the heat underneath it. So throughout the day, sun hits the ground and then they'll trap it. And it can kind of stave off some of those early freezes where it's just like a degree or two. They don't get difficulties with that as much. And then they're protected from the hail too, which they get a lot out there.
That's a good.
Yeah,
Those must be tall panels, right?
14 feet, yeah. So yeah, that's not typically something you see.
So do they all rotate with the sun? Is that common?
Yeah, that's typical for them to track the sun from east to west. They will sometimes have tracking that you can do as well, of like you can get apps on your phone. So like say you have plants that you actually do want to get more sun, you can have them track the opposite way. So it can be good for your agriculture too.
So you said, I don't know why my head got stuck on this. The panels, if you have you wanna get tractors underneath it, you have one side that's 6 feet and the other side that's 8. Is that when it's tipping?
Oh, no, sorry, I meant that there's different sections of ours, and some of them are up to 6 feet, and then the other section is up to 8 feet.
Okay.
Like an overpass.
Yeah, they were mainly just separated for like research purposes of our like CSU researchers will do the same type of research on one side where it's the 6-foot panels and then the same on the other side where it's the 8-foot panels. So they can see if there's like any different to the grass thing, right?
Do they use the same solar to say pump water out of wells that from the same voltaics?
We've heard that a lot, that solar could be really good for irrigation, like especially on sites where they have the pivot irrigation and they can use the corners potentially as having solar on there and it powering the irrigation. That's been something that's been talked about a lot. We haven't heard it integrated a ton. And on our site, since we are under that model with Excel, all of our energy actually goes out to other businesses in the community. We don't use any of it on our site. But that is something that you could do, especially if you're using a lot of power for irrigation.
You could pick a section and that.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we've seen people talking about a lot. Seems like a good option. Just
A well doesn't need much,
yeah.
if it's got water.
Yeah.
If it's got water.
Just saying.
Oh,
Awesome. Any more questions? And we ran a little quick maybe, but.
Well, great. Well, let's thank Cindy for coming. Thank you all very much. And next month,
Next month, we have, the wild,
living with wildlife.
yeah, the new wildlife ranger.
Oh,
CPW?
Yes.
not like anybody's had a bear in their house.
Not really, no.
So we did.
Noah Jones is the new, wildlife manager, district officer, whatever.
Okay. So come next time. To learn more about the wildlife we deal with all the time. Some of us more than others.
Hey,
Thank you so much, Sydney. That was
Yeah.
very informative. I actually put
Yeah.
solar on my house a few years ago to just run my well.
Yeah.
Because it was based on agriculture.
Mm.
I was like, looked into an ag company and they said, well, we do it for resident. Then I moved, but. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
There's snacks, help yourself. Where you go?
Sweet. Thank you guys.
Thank you.